Welcome back to another devlog of Cave Story Before the Storm, and this is the fourth and biggest devlog yet so far. Just to preface this video, previously I was sticking onto Godot 4 Beta 13, but as of recent I've upgraded all the way to the latest stable version 4.0.2 because certain issues that I was having with the change to syntax with the animation tree and animation player have been fixed. The first thing I've changed is the horizontal physics on Curly so that they're more exponential, which I think will be a positive change in terms of game feel and control. I also fixed some previous bugs that I left unfixed, and I've also added 7 more rooms that range from average to very large size. Next, I changed the camera system. The camera is now at the root of the main scene and follows the player so that I don't have to worry about stuff like global positioning when it comes to calculations and stuff like that. The way that it works is it's a camera 2D using smooth movement at 2 pixels, but for horizontal positioning when facing left or right, the camera will smoothly adjust its offset to give a look of the view ahead. However, this means I have to convert the rooms to adjust to this new offset, or else it causes unintended views of the room beyond the boundaries. What I also did as well is, as the center of the camera reaches a certain boundary, no matter what the offset is, whether it's nothing or at its maximum, the camera will not go beyond a certain point and look as intended, while also allowing me to use offset, giving me a more dynamic and better camera than like what I had before. Next, I added 4 more enemies, starting with these small chompers, as I like to call them, that start running around when you hit them. I added these propeller soaps that fly around as well by going up when hitting the floor and down when hitting the ceiling. I also added a bigger variant of the chomper enemy and added a custom soap enemy. I don't really know what to call this enemy or if I'll keep this specific design, but I do like the behavior of it bobbing up and down and being able to interact with its velocity based on how you stand on it. For enemies, I also tweaked their behaviors to be a little more smoother and accurate to the original beta. I also made it so that you don't really move them, and if anything, the enemies move you. Now for the bigger changes. The shatter particles have been changed from a GPU particles 2D so that they can also appear while running in GLAS 3, but most importantly so that their behavior can be custom as well. Initially, when I tried to implement this, I used an unnecessarily complicated system because the usual method of instantiating seeds would create stutter the way I was trying to do it. So I thought, what if I just created a node with a script that contains variables for all of the scenes I would like to have in some sort of global autoload and then reference those scenes. But because I have the reference, I can then instantiate using the reference with whatever qualities I want, be it position, velocity, variables, and more. And it actually worked. The performance actually improved. However, I noticed that there was still a little stutter in some more expensive situations. So I figured out a more complicated method that may be able to finally save my performance, but to be honest, I'm pretty desperate at this point when it comes to this type of stuff, but hopefully my next implementation should improve this. I also added some death particles that collide with the terrain as well, but this may have to change if I'm trying to eliminate stutter. Talking about performance, when I was adding in my own version of the soap pools as a room to the game, I noticed that in the editor and also at runtime, there would be significant issues with performance, and at first I was confused and wondered why, but then soon realized that I was adding tons of tiles and tile maps and expecting that there was no performance cost, especially when all of them were being rendered all at the same time. However, this wasn't a particularly hard issue to fix at all because all I had to do was convert the game to revolve around a room instantiation system, and as soon as I switched to that, my performance improved. I changed a lot of sound effects to be more accurate to the beta or different sounding, and also used different sound effects, some provided by Vozashi that sound better. Talking about transitions, I also removed the black screen fade with the camera. It's no longer needed to cover up the weird camera limit issue that was occurring with the original camera from previous builds. As for weapons, I've added 2 new weapons, the fireball pistol and energy cannon. The fireball pistol works like how it does in the original game and it does 2 damage, the only difference being that it can shoot up to 6 fireballs at once on screen. I also added this limit to the Vulcan revolver that was previously added, and it can only have 3 bullets on screen. As for the energy cannon, it works similar to the Nemesis from the original Cave Story, but it does not pierce. It does a little bit more damage than the fireball, but its noticeable traits are that it fires in a straight line and is considerably faster. It can only have 2 bullets on screen. I've also added a third poo boss, which I'll show a little bit of later, and now onto the big changes. Starting with the inventory, I had to redo the system once because initially I was using config files for some reason, And the bad part was that I was reading them pretty much every frame, so it meant that writing and reading to inventory variables was difficult and caused some issues. And it probably wasn't performant at all, so my second time around I decided to use an array to consolidate all my inventory data. How is information stored? Well, there are three sections of the inventory, the first being the current weapon and plug, which are just 2 items, then a personal section for special weapons and story items that can't be trashed, and finally a general item section. When it came to reading data, I didn't just want to read 3 separate variables for each inventory item, so what would be the best data type to store 3 values in a single variable? That would be a vector 3. Even though my game is not 3D, I can still store X, Y, and Z values, and I'm just using these values for reference so it doesn't end up breaking anything. So essentially I just have a big array of vector 3s, and this allows me to swap different values in the array easily, and the inventory is also stored in a single variable, making all of this very easy to manage. I did have to set up some parameters to separate different item types and whatnot, but in the end it all worked out, and I have a functioning inventory, albeit different from the original. For the save system, this was actually much easier than the inventory system, surprisingly. Even though it has a bug in it right now, I'll fix that by the next devlog. Basically, it's just loading and saving the current state of variables once you go to a save point, which are these cactus things, so overall pretty simple and I'm happy about that. Although it did require some adjustments since initially the project wasn't designed around a save system in mind. And finally, the store. The store was pretty easy as well. It just adds items to the inventory, or if you buy ammo, it checks the inventory to restore the ammo of the first weapon that has below maximum ammo capacity based on what type of weapon it is and whatnot. The final thing I wanted to add is for the soap pools. Unfortunately, one thing that I've encountered with rendering is that there is artifacting that appears in the room. I'm not sure whether this is the case with the fact that it could perhaps be hard to run, but I optimized room loading and that fixed issues related to performance. In Godot 4, they've removed GPU pixel snapping for the project settings, and I am using a new renderer, but I tried all the renderers, compatibility, mobile, and forward plus. All of them exhibit this issue, so I'm ultimately unsure what to think, but I have a few ideas in mind of how to fix this for bigger rooms, so that should help, but it may be a Godot issue, I'm not sure. And that's that. Here's some footage showcasing the newest changes, and I'll see you in the next devlog.